Welcome to, I think this is Block Speak 21 or Block Speak 22. We've been broadcasting through the pandemic. Here in the UK, things have quieted down a bit. Maybe we might be all right. The pubs have been open for 2 weeks, so that's really good. My next guest is extraordinary, following Roger Ver and our hacker friend last week, aka John Cantrell and John McAfee. I'd like to introduce you to Alexandr Filatov, who's a co-founder of Ton Labs. Before I begin, Alexander and I are in deep, deep pain. Me, because Brentford missed out on the Premiership last night by 1 goal. And I believe that Spartak Moscow missed out on the Champions League last week by some dodgy VAR. Is that right, Alexander?
That's absolutely correct. We're on the same page.
So we're very sad. So we'll try and uplift it as we go. So Alexander, obviously from Telegram, I'd like to, I know Ton Labs is doing some great things at the moment, and I'd love to have your take on a number of subjects. But could we just go back to begin with, for an audience that probably knows all about you, but just to double check, you were the man that created the tech behind the Telegram IPO in 2018, I believe, that raised 1.7 billion. And then the SEC made you give it all back and fined you. Is that correct?
Not exactly. Small correction is I'm not directly associated or indirectly associated with Telegram. It's the founders of Telegram Messenger who did that project called Telegram Open Network, Ton, and eventually they lost to SEC, as we all know, and we can talk about that a little bit. However, my team is fully independent. We've been developing what is called Ton operating system, Ton OS, a full-fledged vertically integrated stack over the Ton blockchain to complement it. And again, we can talk about that later. And then when Telegram lost to ECC, we united with a group of top professional validators from around the world and launched what used to be Ton as free Ton. It's the same essentially code base, but it was launched on May 7 in a very decentralized manner, with direct, live streaming in Zoom and YouTube, with transparent generation of Genesis block, and with decentralization that is taking place. So our company essentially is one of the teams who gave birth to Ton blockchain eventually, and we're core developer of the network now.
Okay, does that mean it's now open source?
Yes, that's exactly why we could get hold, because the code is 100% open source.
Okay, so that's amazing. So there's no IP involved. That's fabulous. But I thought you were an investor in Telegram as well. Is that?
No.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
Born in Russia, I presume. Just tell us about your extraordinary career.
I have 3 lives. My first life was with Procter & Gamble in Russia and mostly in Switzerland, in Geneva. Then I did my MBA and went into strategy, M&A kind of thing. And essentially I became CEO of 2 large manufacturing holdings in Russia. One is a $6 billion manufacturing group, and another one is a $2.5 billion manufacturing group. I won't bore you with that. Then I did I've always been a small investor, seed investor in technology. Yeah. As early as 1999 was my first IT investment. And then I did a few down the road in the virtual reality space back in 2005 as an example. So I've always kind of been watching with inspiration for this technology train, which is passing along.
Yeah.
And back 5 years ago, I decided, did a little bit of education in Stanford and Singularity University.
You did that? Did you did the Singularity course?
I did a few actually, and it blew my mind completely. Yeah. I was lucky to have Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil speaking to us directly, and I decided to immediately get into that. First, I was more in the kind of funds business, and eventually 3 years ago, we realized the power of blockchain. With my partners, we created the company Ton Labs. At that time, the idea was to complement the most productive blockchain the Telegram team was building with what we call Ton operating system. And to give you a simple analogy on why it's important is you can think of blockchain as a decentralized microprocessor. Essentially, it's like, decentralized microprocessor. And then if you go back to 1991, when they existed, Linux came up with an operating system and did an open source kind of revolution, essentially. So what we're doing is the closest analogy is putting Linux, open source Linux in the blockchain on top of that decentralized microprocessor. So, but now on top of that, we're a core developer of the network itself because Telegram couldn't launch it. So now it's merged into essentially one product, one stack.
Wow, and that's okay. And that sounds like collaboration at its best, right? You know what I mean? I've always been a fan of open source, especially Linux. Absolutely.
We are 100% open source with full commitment to continue. We're members of Free Software Association, so I think that's the future of IT. That's my personal opinion.
And so, how long are you in this kind of process? How far? I mean, you were separate from Telegram.
We're completely independent from Telegram. I have nothing to do with the token sale. Absolutely, I did obviously some introductions into the Telegram team, but nothing beyond that.
Yeah.
And of course, we had some technical collaboration with Telegram when they were doing the blockchain. My team was essentially the core debugger. We did debugging of the blockchain. And we did a lot of documentation for Tone, for the original protocol. So essentially, when Telegram couldn't launch, we were the only team that knew blockchain well enough, actually, I would say intimately well, to be able to launch that complicated but yet very powerful technology. It was launched on May 7. It's called Free Tone, and the name of the token is Tone.
Okay, all right.
So very simple.
So were you kind of apprised or aware of blockchain when you went to the Singularity? Because I mean, I'm not a rich man, but I could probably afford a 3-month course. And I would really, it really is. It's either that or go to Berkeley for 6 months. That's what I want to do in the next year of my life.
Sure.
I'm just saying, did the Singularity experience, what did it do? Did it open your mind to new concepts?
That was the trigger. My first exposure was in 2016, so well before this 2017 ICO craze that went around. So I became a blockchain fan back then. It was 3 things. It was a blockchain, artificial intelligence, and IoT that got my particular interest. So blockchain became my life, my mission. But we do have a partnership project now also in Italy between the Freetone blockchain and one very promising Internet of Things startup, because blockchain and IoT come along very well together. Blockchain being backend for IoT. So essentially, out of those 3, I ended up focusing on the blockchain because I do believe it's a very transformational technology. It was a little bit spoiled with this 2017 bubble, ICO bubble. It was an overhype, but now it's coming back out of that winter, out of the kind of crypto winter. And it's unfolding, the technology is unfolding as a pure kind of architecture IT play rather than a speculative thing, which is something where it's going to properly unfold with all its beauty.
Absolutely. So you're interested in IoT and AI and blockchain. I mean, all new technologies, really. You weren't so much a fan of crypto. Were you a fan of crypto?
I never was a fan of crypto. Obviously, crypto is going to come. I do believe, for example, that all of the countries very soon, I give it maximum 5 years maximum, will have central bank digital currencies, so-called CBDCs. I don't know if you saw yesterday announcement, US is finally warming up to that. There was a very loud proposal to do experiments. Bank of France just is closing the tender for the digital euro experiments. China essentially launched the cryptocurrency on April 24 with their BSN blockchain. So it's coming. It's just a few years.
Yeah, it does feel like as if there is an acceleration now.
So there'll be CBDCs, just to answer your question.
Yeah.
Then there will be independent cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and hopefully Tone from our project as a clean cryptocurrency, and some of the other ones. And then, of course, there'll be another couple of things. There'll be stable coins, and overall DeFi is picking up quite nicely, decentralized finance. And tokenization will also find its way, broader tokenization, quite a few industries, and we can talk about that.
Can I ask you a really stupid question? So digital currencies, sovereign digital currencies, would their price differ from the fiat version of that currency? Or is that just a silly question?
No, it's a great question. It really depends.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
I'm not sure exactly how all of them are going to execute that. Kind of the classical thing now is that central bank digital currencies, it really depends. There are 2 approaches. One is that they'll be somehow pegged to their fiat version, and eventually fiat version will just kind of fade away, I think, That's one school of thought. Another school of thought, they're completely independent because it would be perceived as an experiment. Like, for example, take Venezuela. They have fiat currency, which is obviously extremely unstable. And then they have their digital version, for which they did a very nice, I think ICO raised $2 billion from the air, from what I remember, if I remember correct. And now it's traded somewhere below 1 billion. And it's actually more stable, ironically. Than
was it Venezuela? It was like reverse mining, I think. It was some weird way of creating a crypto. But you're right, it's like $1 billion is $1 billion.
But it's just Venezuela. I mean, obviously, Chinese, US, digital euro would be way powerful. So I'm not sure which approach is going to win exactly. I think that's why everybody calls it experiments in Europe, in the US, just to understand which version will fly. And I'm sure there'll be also stable coins, national stable coins linked to, for example, gold reserves of certain countries. I know at least 3 projects globally that are looking at that. There is a project in Switzerland to link stablecoin to nickel and palladium. To reserves of nickel. So there'll be quite a few of those stable coins around. I think you have a few as well. You have USDT, USDC, etc., which are quite powerful, but there'll be more of those.
But I think it's always going to be like, I don't know, it's always going to be hyper-localized, I think, these types of things. And it's not going to be so much sovereign, but it's a bit like COVID. You're doing well in the UK at the moment. We did really badly at the beginning. America's terrible. God knows what's happening in Russia or India, you know what I mean? But it might be that there'll be areas like Zug in Switzerland that will come up with some great ideas and all that. But if these kind of CBDCs and digital currencies become the main and start to kind of push out fiat, what effect does that have on existing cryptocurrencies? So let's just say Bitcoin and Ethereum. Does that make them more likely to be adopted, or are they going to be pushed out?
No, I think they will coexist. I think there'll be a few classes, just to repeat, there will be CBDCs from the central banks. There will be country stable coins linked again to the gold reserve or something. There'll be independent decentralized chains, like obviously Bitcoin, like Ethereum, like hopefully Freeton, and some of the other ones coming up with a proof of stake technology, which is the most recent protocol, type of protocols. There'll be tokenized assets. It'll be huge in real estate. I have absolutely no doubts about that real estate will be tokenized. There'll be tokenized paintings. There'll be tokenized, rights on the music. So it'll be quite a lot of traction there. I think tokenization is going to, there'll be tokenized identities as well. So digital identities of people, all of that is really kind of around the corner.
Tokenized racehorses, maybe. I might be able to buy a share in a racehorse at last.
There is a beautiful project in Australia on that. I don't want to advertise with the name. They're good friends and partners.
Tell me afterwards.
It's like crypto kitties where you where you can own a digital crypto kitty. So they went beyond that. So you can own a digital horse, and then you can race them as well. And depending on how you breed them, your horse kind of performs. I think it's a very powerful idea.
Is this live?
Shaping up. I think they're coming out of beta like as we talk.
Can you tell me after this show?
I will tell you after the show.
Off the record?
The name. Yeah. I can send you a horse as well. $1,000 horse that I have as a gift.
All right. All day long, thank you. I did a number of blockchain keynotes when I was new to blockchain. And the story of horse racing in this country is that 3 Arabian horses, faster horses, came to this country in the 18th century. And our whole bloodstock industry, where you spend $2 million on a horse that's just been born because you trust the ledger of the blockchain of the horse industry. I always thought that was quite a good way of describing blockchain, but most of my friends think I'm an idiot. So maybe this is my way of paying back to them. See, I told you it mattered when it came to horses. That's very, very interesting. That's really okay. So maybe just speak more in general terms before we go back to Freeton, because I'm happy to tell everyone about that. PayPal looks like it's going to be accepting Bitcoin. is this not before time or revolutionary, or should it have happened before?
I'm surprised. I'm surprised it took so long. This is such a natural thing for them to do. I think their concern was regulation, because regulation is still a big open question. So I think the minute they figured out their risk profile or agreed with the regulators, I'm not really close to their regulatory explorations. So I think they launched the minute they felt comfortable with regulation. It's as simple as that. But otherwise, it's a perfect marriage.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy enough to pay. I mean, I pay for stuff occasionally in Bitcoin, you know, and I was talking to someone the other day who knows nothing about Bitcoin, and was absolutely astounded by it, that you can buy it. You can buy airplane tickets. You know, there's a huge list of things that you can do, and PayPal, I think, was obviously going to accelerate that acceptance. But then we have this ridiculous Twitter hack last week, where you double your money with Bitcoin. Which gives the industry another bad name. It's full of scammers. It's full of hackers. How damaging do you think that scam was? I don't think they even got that much money. I think they probably got a couple of $100,000, and that was it. Would you think that was just someone just proving that Twitter was rubbish, or was it really just baddies doing their bad stuff?
I didn't really closely follow the story. I cannot say I'm a big Twitter fan. I do have an account, but it's more of a US thing, and we operate globally. So it's just hackers are so powerful. I think their overall budgets are comparable to the budget of large IT corporations.
Yeah.
So it's just a race between hackers and cybersecurity and overall IT community. And it's just an element of that race, I think. Who shows bigger muscles. So
I think the race is being lost by the people who are being hacked. Personally, I mean, I previously worked as a Forbes journalist. I did a lot of cybersecurity pieces, and actually got quite a lot of threats from the stuff that I was writing. But I think there's a lot to be done to stop hackers. If they can get into Twitter as easily as that, their biggest accounts, I mean, Jesus.
I'm a member of one large kind of business association, global association. Again, don't want to advertise with the name. And we ran a survey in Europe. What are the top 5 challenges? And obviously there was stuff like climate change, etc. And cybersecurity threats was absolutely on top of the list. Was in top 5.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the issues of the humanity. Because imagine with the power of IT unfolding, with sensors everywhere on our fridges, in our cars. So imagine, your car being hacked or something, or your devices back at home, appliances, they can blow up. So it's cybersecurity is one of the
and the same thing with IoT, right? I mean, it was a couple of years ago, an American campus, American university, was hacked by a light bulb, a smart light bulb, and another campus was hacked for their vending machine. It's full of holes. No one. It's ridiculous. So if you're doing something that's going to help us with IoT and AI and blockchain, I need to know more. So tell me about Freeton, and shill as loudly as you like, because I'm very interested.
Sure. The idea of Telegram co-founders, the Durov brothers, was to build the most powerful and productive protocol, because one of the major issues on the way of blockchain adoption so far has been what we call low throughput. Throughput is essentially a combination of speed and productivity, like how many transactions you can perform per second, how many blocks you can generate simultaneously, what amount of data you can put in those blocks. So we call it throughput as a cumulative thing. And obviously it's been an issue for the first powerful protocols like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, which are relatively slow, and there are high transaction costs in there as well. So naturally, there is a new generation of blockchain protocols coming up. Most of them are is a proof of stake model, and they're much faster.
Yeah.
So Freeton, I think technically de facto now it's the fastest protocol out there in the market. We've been testing the protocol for speeds up to 100,000 transactions per second, which is sufficient, for example, for fintech, because Microsoft and Visa have about 40,000 transactions per second. So we could complement that now, or in exchange that with the blockchain. So these are sufficient speeds, and Freeton was designed to perform at million plus transactions per second, which is enough essentially to serve any use case around the world, any global use case, including being a backend for billions of IoT devices. So that's kind of a big idea that they had. Also, there is more functionality in the smart contracts versus the Ethereum network. So you can put more complex business logic on the protocol. And that's what they've done. And that's what we launched now again with the community of validators in a decentralized manner.
Yeah.
The protocol is functional. It's everybody can look at productivity at ton.live. It's less than a second. It's typically somewhere at 0.2, 0.3 seconds. And the magic is it's not a single chain, but it's what we call infinite sharding. So the minute there is more...
Sorry, what was it?
Infinite sharding.
Okay, yeah.
It's like when there is more load, there is more transactions. You know, the master chain, there are shards, vertical shards, and it's almost infinite. So you can put almost as many transactions as you want. Less transactions shards down, so it's kind of like this. It goes like this. So that's why it's much more scalable. And this is essentially the first sharding, infinite sharding protocol, or dynamic sharding, I should say, dynamic sharding protocol out there in production. And once the network is sufficiently decentralized, most likely by end of August, when more validators are added, it will be announced as a mainnet.
So the start of September, it will be announced as a mainnet.
Yeah, sometime end of August, okay. I believe, when 300 validators will be added, which is absolutely enough, I think, and everybody believes in the industry for proper decentralization, which is important also for regulatory affairs, because to avoid the destiny of some of the other protocols that ended up badly with the SEC, the idea here is to be truly decentralized. This is one big statement, and with nobody controlling the network and nobody influencing its valuation. And the second one is to conduct no token sale, no offering. There are no VCs behind the network. It's launched without any, let's say, offering of tokens. The tokens are being distributed by community consensus to people and organizations and companies who add value to the network as validators, as developers. Or
what does a validator do apart from give you a great testimonial?
It's essentially signs transactions. Right. So there is a number of validators. It will begin soon, more than 300, and 2/3 need to approve to sign transactions for it to go through. Right. Which is what is happening. And then just to finalize answering your question, kind of on the big picture, and the second element is TonOS, because again, it's a decentralized microprocessor, speaking the classical IT language. So now we put a full-fledged operating system on top of that caters to developers. It makes it much easier to develop for the network. You don't need to go into low-level languages as you typically have to join the blockchain. You can write, there are compilers, for example, for C, for C++, for Solidity. So you can write on higher level languages that people typically know. And it's much faster and much cheaper. And then there is a front end for users to bring user interfaces and user experience to the levels that got used to, with the social networks, with App Store, with classical apps, to bring it out of the geeky space of decentralized applications into kind of top class UI UX that people get used to, and make it user friendly for non-IT geeks to be able to use the technology, not even realizing there is blockchain behind it as a backend, which brings certain benefits that we can talk about, but just having a typical experience, top class experience. So that's the big picture idea.
Very interesting. Who would you consider your main competitors? Are you a competitor to Telegram? Are you a competitor?
Oh, no. Telegram is a messenger. We're a blockchain protocol with operating system. On top of that, there are a number of very reputable proof-of-stake protocols out there. I would probably mention Near, Solana, there'll be Ethereum 2.0, Cosmos, Polkadot. So there are quite a few of reputable protocols, and I don't look at it as competition. This blockchain space is so small and so fragmented today that I think there is a lot of room for all of the protocols, and also the trend for interoperability between the protocols is shaping up. So I'm a big believer in interoperability. We as a community of Freeton, will be initiating bridges to all the top networks out there. So
Yeah,
just to drive interoperability.
It reminds me a lot of the mobile industry, where you could only send text messages to the same operator, to someone who's on the same operator. So there was no interoperability between, the major networks. And as soon as that was rendered okay, the whole business went through the roof, And I agree that blockchain, in all of its public and private and different guises, is extraordinarily fragmented. How would you see it being defragmented? How could it become interoperable? Is that a huge challenge, or does it rely on collaboration between protocols or companies? It sounds like a very difficult thing to do.
It will take a while. I think there'll be, first of all, not all of the protocols will survive. There'll be a few ones which will be out there at the top in terms of performance and value in the network. Maybe, I don't know, 5, 6, something like that. That's my personal belief. 5 years down the road, which will emerge as like the standards. Then, as I mentioned, there are already bridges being built between different protocols. Some of them, like Cosmos, for example, are actually designed to be unifying protocol, unifying some of the other blockchain networks. They call it Internet of Blockchains. They call it Cosmos. So I think there'll be like common standards as well emerging at different layers, at the protocol layers, at the application layers, just as it emerged in the classical IT. And all of that will essentially be helping to consolidate the industry and appear more, more robust and more user-friendly and with much larger adoption. And then also as governments and large corporations step into the game, they will obviously contribute to that place being more unified. IBM is extremely active. A few banks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and some of the European ones are extremely active. A few governments are very bullish on the blockchain. France, obviously China. China is, I can talk a lot there because we are discussing big cooperation with Chinese BSN blockchain. So China is extremely bullish on the blockchain. They basically want to make it as a second backend alternative to the classical IT infrastructure. That's we at Freeton, we don't call it blockchain. We call it decentralized or distributed backend, which is a more precise definition. And it also indicates the potential of at the IT industry at large.
I was invited to a lunch at the House of Commons a couple of years ago. Blockchain companies, Chinese blockchain companies meeting UK blockchain companies, and let's just say it was quite an amusing experience because there were language difficulties, and there was one moment in that experience where I laughed so much I couldn't cry. But anyway, it's a different story. But they were talking about the UK and the Chinese being great, and this just shows maybe the arrogance of the UK. One of the companies there was Ant Financial, that had just got a valuation of 150 billion. I think they're probably doing something this week to get a valuation of 200 billion. And we have these two comedians in the UK called Ant and Dec. They're just stupid boys that on fronts of TV shows. And the Lord, who was running the whole event for about 20 people, and he goes, well, I've seen the Chinese companies there, it's lovely. And I saw this company called Ant. And I thought, oh, if Ant is here, well, maybe Dec might be here as well. Ha, 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 ha. And I had to put up my hand and say, do you know what Ant is? Well, I know a little bit. I said, they're worth $150 billion. I don't think saying that they're a comedy act is actually going to work, and maybe you're losing control of the world, mate, because of that. Very, very, very argument. You know what I mean? And the fact that the UK and Chinese governments have been working together on blockchain, I'm not so sure about that either.
Well, UK's strength is fintech. I mean, for me, UK is number one on fintech globally.
You think so? Good. We need something. Yeah,
absolutely.
Mate.
There are quite a few. I don't want to mention any names, but there are quite a few digital banks or neobanks, whatever is the preferred name, that are shaping up quite nicely.
Challenger banks, challenger banks, they call them, not
Challenger Bank is another name. So yeah, in fact, this front end that we're building for Freeton called Surf, it's an application called Surf. We'll be looking forward to cooperating with all of that and try to merge the two universes: the universe of peer-to-peer transactions in crypto with the universe of digital banking, because it's kind of similar target audience and it's similar user experience, and there are synergies as the world becomes more digitized and decentralized technologies, make major inroads into centralized architecture.
You mentioned DeFi earlier. You're a big fan, yeah?
I think it's currently the number one segment, the hottest segment in the blockchain space. I think it will eventually. It just makes sense, It's you use one of the key strengths of technology being bringing trust essentially and removing the and the immutability of blockchain into finance, where a lot of things happen. People cheat on each other. Banks are being shut down, companies are being shut down, money is being lost. Blockchain adds an additional security element if done properly, if there is an end-to-end encryption. So blockchain adds to security as well, besides trustability and immutability. So blockchain disrupting finance with DeFi is just so obvious.
Do you think it will happen quickly?
It's now comparable to the 2017 ICO boom, kind of the excitement in the space. Yeah. But again, we're trying to be a little bit more strategic and build architectures that will have a broader appeal. Yeah. That could be backend for Internet of Things, because there is no backend today, proper backend for IoT, to be able to handle extremely billions of fragmented transactions globally. That's a big challenge. Yeah. It cannot be handled by today's IT systems properly, obviously, and with sufficient speed. Things like digital identity of people, national voting, national elections on the blockchain to bring trust into the system, medical records on the blockchain, land and real estate registries on the blockchain. Those things are so obvious, so they'll make it very quickly into the what we call GovTech, government technologies. Yeah. In fact, we're members of also Government Blockchain Association in the US. It's quite powerful association.
Is the company based in Russia?
No, in Switzerland. We're headquartered in Switzerland. The mine company.
That's probably
we do have some developers in Russia where the quality and value of talent is quite good, but it's a decentralized team spread across Eastern and Central Europe.
I just would a couple more questions. Fascinating conversations.
Sorry, really, the company I mean Ton Labs. Freeton is based nowhere.
Yes.
Freeton is a decentralized network with no legal entity, etc. Yeah.
Actually involving people and humans. I just go back to Telegram. So the 1.7 billion that Telegram raised in 2018, the SEC made them pay it back.
Yes, I think it was paid back. Whatever was spent on developing the project. So with that subtracted, the balance was returned to the investors. I have to say I did not follow that story closely. The return because again at that time we were busy gathering or joining us probably, but we were joining that community of validators. And making sure the technology can be properly launched, which happened on May 7th. But yes, from what I know, that money was returned.
Well, they were fine.
And there was a settlement. Right? From what I know, there was a settlement between SEC and Telegram.
Because I used to be quite good mates with the Kick Boys in Canada, KIK. And I think they've got the same problem with the SEC. I think they're going to have to pay back. It's a security, not a token.
Sure. It's an interesting thing. I don't know if you heard one of the 5 SEC commissioners yesterday saying that she disagrees with the SEC's decision over Telegram, where SEC stopped. I think she brings up a very good point that scares blockchain projects away from the US. For example, Freeton, until proper decentralization is reached, put a so-called geofence on the United States. We cannot, the network does not allow people from the US get tokens or participate in validation, for example, today of the network. So, but the minute the network is properly decentralized and it's acknowledged by community in large, that geofence would be removed. But I know quite a few US companies that would love to join Freeton. They just cannot, so it's a little bit, I think that's a very right argument that she's bringing up, that in order to attract the technology, and blockchain is one of the exponential technologies by singularity definitions. You don't want to scare that away from your country, I think. So, and I think SEC is acknowledging that. I think they're looking for that balance. So I'm really looking forward for them to strike it in the next couple of years to come.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
That people would not be scared of the US. That if you want to be compliant, if you're not a scam, if you want to go for decentralization, if you're transparent, if you open source, don't scare those projects away.
Because they're going to happen. They're going to happen anyway, right? It would just be nice that
Sure, they'll be just looking forward to as Tone found its way to be launched in a decentralized manner. So all of the other technologies would seek that decentralized way as well.
Thank you very much about your optimism around DeFi. I'm considering a couple of advisory roles of a couple of DeFi companies. So you're giving me a bit more confidence.
Go for it. It's the hottest segment right now.
All right. Alexander Filiatov changed my life all day long. We always ask this kind of question at the end. Bitcoin price, any predictions this year? End of 2020? Do you feel there's something about to happen?
Bitcoin is kind of, Bitcoin is obviously the first love of everybody in the space. I mean, it's so unique. It was so brave. It's so disruptive. Although it was not, noticeable. I probably saw it back in 2011. First noticed that phenomenon. But again, I've never been honestly interested in the speculative aspect and the price aspect. For me, what I'm looking at is how we can bring just a piece of philosophy for one minute. It's, I love internet, but we all love it. I love it as it was back in 1994 when I first experienced it, when it was very decentralized. There were no, large corporations which are capturing your data and monetizing your data. So I think it's a little bit of a balance has been lost between decentralization and centralization. So I think we need to find it back, the balance. So obviously blockchain is one of the core technologies that that if done properly brings decentralization, brings data protection into the place. With blockchain, you can really properly protect user data, so that with your private key you control it. Like, who do you want to give it? When do you want to give it? Is it the whole thing or just partially? So that's something that brings control back to the users. And I think that's very powerful. And that piece I very much admire. And then also blockchain is going to simply accelerate GDP growth, because my 5 predictions is central bank digital currencies. You don't have to print, you eliminate a lot of cost. You make it seamless, you make it fast. International trade, 99% of international trade is going to be on blockchain 10 years from now. Tokenization, which also makes it easier, like ownership of things, or movement of value, movement of assets, makes it very transparent, etc., etc. All the things that blockchain is bringing are just simply another way to accelerate the growth and improve lives of people around the world, and that's what inspires me a lot, the utility aspect of blockchain.
We're on the same side, comrade. That's what I believe. I'm not so much.
Sorry, but to answer your question, because I think I escaped your question somehow.
People do that. People do that quite easily with me. I go off somewhere else.
I do think Bitcoin would be quite valuable. It would continue to be a very valuable cryptocurrency, but no investment advice is given here, obviously.
No, absolutely. All right, well, listen, Alexander, that's a fascinating and intellectual philosophical conversation about blockchain and Freeton and Ton Labs and open source. And you're my type of dude, man. I've sent you my email address there. I look forward to receiving my digital hoof of the horse that you promised me. I'll keep you to it.
Digital horse is coming.
It's come in. It would be lovely to have you back on the show later in the year or early next year, because I think you've added a lot of value to our audience, and it's been a great pleasure to meet you. And thank you for your time.
It's a real pleasure on my side, and it's an honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, that was the extraordinary Alexandr Filatov telling us about his experiences at Telegram and what he's doing now with Freeton. Great man, great conversation. This is me signing off for the week. We've got more guests coming up in the next couple of weeks. Please tune in to BlockSpeak. It's the most intelligent crypto blockchain podcast out there, as evidenced by the great Alexandr Filatov just then. Thank you. See you next week. Bye. See you, Alex.
Thank you.
Hello, gentlemen. So today with me, Alexandr Filatov, CEO of Ton Labs, Mita Goroshevsky, CTO of Ton Labs, and Pavel Prigolovka, Chief Strategy Officer. Hello, gentlemen, and thank you for coming here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, so you have launched Freeton a couple of weeks ago. What is Freeton? Can you explain, please, for those who missed that or those who don't understand that fully, and how things are going right now?
It's not we who launched Freeton, really. It's a community who launched Freeton. We were part of this community of the validators, some developers who joined to launch a Freeton. And well, Freeton is a decentralized blockchain, basically based on Ton technology. And what else? We're trying to bring as many people as possible to this blockchain, and to basically free the software from the constraints of that happened, I would say, to this network with all the history over the last 6 months or so. And we're just proving that software cannot be stopped, and it's really free. And the free in Freeton as in free software, exactly the same.
Maybe a couple of background points for me. So I guess all the listeners are aware of the Telegram Open Network project, which was lately renamed as the Open Project, which was incubated by the Telegram group, developed by the Telegram team, Nikolai Durov particularly. And on March 24, the New York Federal Court basically gave permanent injunction on the Telegram team's ability to launch the blockchain. So they could no longer launch it, Ton specifically on grams, and distribute it to the investors. So that's why a community of independent validators from top networks, proof of stake networks like Tezos, Polkadot, Cosmos, etc., teamed up with Ton Labs and launched the network in a very decentralized way, as Miti already mentioned, with the generation of the Genesis blog in Zoom, with journalists present, and live streaming on YouTube for unlimited audience. And basically all the governance calls and committees of Freeton are happening in a transparent manner with live stream to YouTube. So those are a couple of builds for me.
And can you please explain some basics about Ton blockchain? What is it about? What are so special about it?
If you want technically, I can talk about technically,
okay.
Technical aspect of that. I mean, that's the first. I think that's the basic technology for this, and let's say it's the fastest blockchain right now, like with the I would say the greatest throughput, with the lowest latency. Because we don't like to talk about speeds, of course, because speeds are very like not precise term for that. But for the overall audience, I think speed is good enough, like how many transactions you can do per second. And today, there are several blockchains that competing, I would say, in this category. I don't know if competing again the right word for that, because we don't like to call blockchains competitions, because we're competing all together against something else, I think. But in any respect, there are a few blockchains which are in the same ballpark or trying to do the same thing. And namely, blockchains like Solana, like Near, these types of, maybe Polkadot a little bit, these types of blockchains. And Ton is the first blockchain with dynamic sharding, and first blockchain with dynamic sharding in production. So we have launched a blockchain which is operational as a mainnet right now. Mm-hmm. Of course, we call it a test net, but we're not planning to restart. So if nothing wrong happens, it will just morph into the mainnet once it will be fully decentralized. So so we have measured the throughput over the last 3 months, and we have achieved about 40 to 60,000 transactions per second, and that's even not with the, like I would say, with the most efficient setup. So it's definitely, if you compare that with like Solana, for example, which claimed about the same, they're not, it's not a sharding blockchain, but that's because of the design. But they're still in some beta phase, mainnet is not launched, and so on. And Near, very nice project, I think, also about sharding, but they just started a network with 4 nodes and proof of authority, consensus, which basically, again, not very production ready, I would say.
Okay.
So that's the more technical aspect. The difference, again, not on the throughput will basically enable you to create applications which you couldn't do before. Now, basically, you can think about that as just a decentralized backend, and it will compete with AWS, Google Firebase, things like that, in my view, and not just against other blockchains. So I think that's a major difference.
Okay. Maybe a couple of words on functionality, like the specifics of the virtual machine and everything is a smart contract in Ton Labs.
Well, again, I don't know how technical we want to go about that, but
maybe some basics.
Definitely. Yeah, well, there is of course it's a virtual. There is a virtual machine, the blockchain, the virtual machine created by Nikolai Durov, and this is like a stack-based virtual machine. It's not in comparison like to what people are trying to do now, taking Wasm, for example, and build virtual machine on top of Wasm, or use Wasm, let's say, as a virtual machine for their blockchains. This is a special purpose built virtual machine. On top of that, it has different languages and parts of high-level languages that you can write smart contracts on, and parts of these languages we have developed in Ton Labs. You can use modified version of Solidity to write smart contracts. You can use C++ or C. And there are also a couple of languages that Nikolai has created, like FunC, for example. So yeah, and there's also very special language called Fifth, but again, I don't want to go too deeply into that. But there are documents exist, you can read about that, and yeah, it's basically a general smart contract platform. The difference between, I would say, it's more smart contract platform than anything else in existence, because in Ton there are only smart contracts, meaning every account has to have a code in order for you to be able to operate with that. Unlike in like Bitcoin and Ethereum, well, you can have an address and you can have a balance of this address without any need for a smart contract, and the smart contracts then becomes totally separate thing. In Ton, everything is smart contract. So you can have an address, but if you want to to use funds to have funds on this address, then you need to deploy a code there. and which makes it really very special, I would say, and really, I would say, for truly computing platform.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe again a couple of additions for me. So what also makes Freeton unique is that besides the blockchain protocol itself, Ton Labs has invested significant resources, human and financial, to develop what we call Ton operating system. We can talk about it later, but in a couple of words, it's basically it's an operating system that bridges, that caters to developers and users. It has a new generation front end, and again, we can talk about this separately, and has a whole bunch of tools for developers to make development on Ton faster, cheaper, and much easier, and more flexible. So this is the second big differentiator that most other protocols don't really have. Day one.
Okay, great. And what do you think? What is the main feedback that you got from the crypto community after releasing Freeton? How do you feel?
I can start, and then colleagues jump in. We see a lot of excitement because everybody was hoping for Telegram to be able to launch Ton, and I think most of the crypto community, I would say 99%, were obviously supporting Telegram and its I wouldn't call it battle in this argument with Security and Exchange Commission. And obviously when community in a very decentralized manner launched Ton code, I think this is good news for everybody. So we see a lot of hype. We saw that there are already almost 3,000 validators who signed up for the contest at which we announced a couple of days ago to become a validator. There are more than 2,300 developers who signed up, who want to develop on Ton. And there are more than 10,000 members in the community. And also there are a lot of national communities which are being built. There is already very active French, Spanish, Italian, Chinese and Korean community, and obviously Russian as well. And we are expecting in the next few days to add Israeli, Malta, Cyprus, Indonesia, etc., and then the others will come in. So for this phase of the project that we're in the final beta phase, having an operating system, having such a support of the community and such engagement of the community, we think this is very encouraging, and it gives us energy and inspiration to move forward.
Okay, so as you said, a lot of people were very excited due to Freeton release. But at the same time, there were a lot of skeptics and those who were very suspicious on this subject. The main questions that are asked throughout different forums, boards, and channels: is there any connection between Ton blockchain that was awaited by Telegram team and Freeton besides open source technology?
Yeah, I think also you have to remember that Ton Labs has engaged in for almost 2 years in development of all the components of Ton, and that includes the full node and the validator. And we already released the full node code in a different language than C++ implementation of Telegram. We've used Rust. We've published already the full node code, and hopefully we'll publish the validator code in just some weeks' time. So basically, if needed, for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason could be, but if needed, the Freeton can also not rely on Telegram code. I hope that's not really ever will be needed, but just for the sake of the argument, in terms of how independent this launch is on this network is, then it definitely fully independent in every respect. But of course, it fully complies and relies on the design and the principles that Nikolai and the Telegram team has envisioned for this blockchain. I personally hope that they will continue to support their code and develop their code, but that's not up to me, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
One thing, maybe, Sergey, maybe a small addition we forgot to mention is that the Ton OS is a pretty serious open source effort there are more than 2 million lines of optimized and tested code behind TonOS. So it's a significant contribution also to the adoption of the protocol itself.
Yeah, we will talk about TonOS a little bit later. So we know that Telegram's Ton was supposed to have its own token called Gram, and FreeTon is having another token. So what is the tokenomics behind FreeTon tokens?
Long name is Ton Crystal, short name is Ton.
Mm-hmm. And
so it's FreeTon and Ton. The token is called, native token is called Ton.
Yeah. Are these tokens planned to be listed anywhere, and does anyone can buy it now?
No, it's impossible to buy it now. The objective, the current number one overriding objective, is to fully decentralize the network. As we already mentioned, we launched with about 20 validators, independent validators, and there are contests now which would last for a couple of weeks to select from many applications about 300 validators. So that would make network truly decentralized. We don't know any other network proof of stake that has so many independent validators. And then basically, and only validators have tokens right now. And only after decentralization is achieved, exchanges will be able to get access to some tokens, which would start, and we can talk how they will get into circulation. Would have access to the supply of tokens and do the listings. There is not going to be any listings initiated by the community or Ton Labs. It would be, again, it's a fully decentralized approach. So exchanges would have to get their tokens and list themselves. Do you want to talk a little bit about distribution?
Yeah. I think that, well, first of all, maybe it's like not clear, but we and the Freedom community is not in any way planning to sell anything. Okay, that's very clear. We're not going to do any ICOs or any kind of this type of thing. So this token has never been planned to be sold. So that's that. I think that's a very important point to make. The distribution, the initial distribution of tokens, as Sasha said, will be through the contests, and there will be many contests, like a lot of contests for different, and we just started with 3 contests right now, but we hope to add every week more and more contests for different types of contests, for different types of possible engagement. We want to distribute this token in a meritocratic way. Basically, if you're contributing to the project something, whatever it is, we want you to be able to get the tokens through this merit, effort that you have made. And we don't know all the mechanisms that the token will be distributed by, and parts of the contests are actually to find this mechanism. So, for example, we want to do the user airdrops of the tokens, but the exact mechanism of this is not decided, and we are reaching out to the community to help us to decide what the mechanisms will be. And there is a current contest about the, and very active, by the way, very lively discussion on the forum about what the mechanism. There are already like dozens of proposals of how to the best way to distribute the tokens, and I'm actually amazed with the engagement of the community in that respect. And the thought, really, the feedback is it's not linear. I would say it's very well thought through, and community understands the challenges, understands what's the problem might be, and so on and so forth. And I think if we continue with that type of communal effort, I think we will definitely find the solutions for all the ways to distribute these tokens and in this meritocratic form. And I think this is very interesting experiment in the governance. And of course, once the tokens are distributed, the main use of these tokens will be first and foremost the governance of the system itself. And we engaging also developers community to write the governance contracts. For example, the soft majority voting contract that will be used to vote for any token holder. So the more tokens we distribute, the more people will be able to participate in the governance of the tokens. And once they participate in the governance of the, meaning they can make decisions about the further tokens distribution. And this way, the majority of tokens will be distributed. And then whenever the free market will happen out of this, when it will be fully decentralized, as Sasha said, then we don't know about the dates or whenever it happens.
Okay.
You're muted.
It has to be organic after decentralization is achieved. And maybe just a couple of numbers. So the way token distribution is intended in the original design is that partners that bring user base will get 85% of tokens, their users and partners themselves. Developers contributing to the code would get 10%, and validators, administrators, and community managers of the network would get 5%. Obviously, this would all happen over time. This would happen very, very gradually. This would be voted by the community, every distribution of tokens in every partnership. And the idea is to create, to try and engage 1 billion users into the free Ton platform organically over time, which would be a competitive advantage of this platform, because we think this is a unique feature of free Ton, is that because of its scalability and throughput, as we've been talking, this can be the first the first blockchain with true user adoption, with hundreds of millions users using that and supporting billions of transactions.
Okay. Of course, speaking about Ton blockchain, we can't not to speak about Durov brothers. I read that you have met Pavel Durov personally in 2017. Can you please describe your meeting? How and where did you meet? How it happened?
Yes, I mean it's not a big deal. As I said, we've been contributing substantially to the network, so of course there were a couple of occasions to meet and talk about technical collaboration, like where our value is needed, what kind of contribution to debugging is needed. So a couple of meetings that we had purely technical nature, and there's not much more to say about that.
And how did you reach out? Because I think that a lot of people are trying to reach Durov brothers. Did you know him before that, or?
To be very honest with you, I just don't remember. It happened a couple of years ago, and again a couple of times. It's once you contribute, it's not that difficult. I mean, Pavel and Nikolai have nicknames in Telegram. You can go and try to write to them. They might reply, they might not reply. I guess I was just, a little bit lucky in the sense that there was a mutual desire to be complementary. And again, this was in the context of technical collaboration and debugging.
Okay. And how did you come to the idea of creating Ton Labs?
It's a great question, actually. Just to step back for a second. Co-founders of Ton Labs, before Ton Labs was created, were organizing a fund called Industry 4.0. And that fund was intended to invest in exponential technologies, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, blockchain, obviously being one of them. And blockchain was our favorite. That was even in 2016, before the famous 2017, blockchain jump to $20,000 and the whole ICO hype happened. So we were on the blockchains before, and we always saw that blockchain never really got proper adoption, neither by the developer community nor by the users, for a number of reasons. We think there are like 5 major reasons behind that. And what Durov brothers, for whom I have great respect, what they've done is, obviously they were covering 2 most fundamental problems. One is developing the first blockchain which has true scalability and throughput needed to support mass adoption globally. And the second one is giving access to, at that time, 200 million users, which today is 400 million users, which is important because blockchain applications or protocols don't have direct access to large pools of users. So those are the 2 fundamental things that they've been addressing, and we decided to complement that effort to address the other 3 issues. And the other 3 issues are, 1, blockchain space never really had comprehensive developer tools, what developers got used to, and Mitya can talk about that in details, but basically the idea is to bring coding for Ton to the standards of that they get used to in in classical IT infrastructure. So that's TonOS. And again, we can zoom into that. The second thing was to develop some sort of a browser or catalog, and that's been addressed in our front end. Again, we can talk about this separately, but the idea is to have blockchain as accessible as what people got used to in Internet 2.0, with social networks, with Apple Store, with Google Play, with all those things. So that was the second thing. And the third one is UI UX. One of the elements of TonOS is a comprehensive library of visuals. And again, Mitya can talk about that in more details, which hopefully developers would adapt. And then the whole thing, the whole ecosystem would feel to the user not like a somewhat geeky and special blockchain space where you need efforts and special skills, special IT skills to be able to make sense of that, with all the wallets and addresses and all of that stuff. But it would feel like, like what people got used to in the current standards. I know, Mitty, if you want to comment on that a little bit more.
And of course, Ton is surrounded now with news about its legal issues with SEC. So what do you think about all that situation that happened with Ton and Gram tokens? What's your view on that?
Well, first of all, as a disclaimer, we really have nothing to do with that. Our opinion, obviously, is that, obviously all regulators around the world, and the US regulator is the most, I would say, concerned and engaged one, are concerned with the way, with what role cryptocurrencies will play. It's not a secret that, for example, most of the central banks are looking at their own central bank digital currencies because they want to continue to control, emissions and circulation of money around the world. There are a couple of tenders happening now for the central bank digital currency. We're expecting China to launch it very soon, by the way. And we know US is looking into this. So regulators are just concerned. They want to control the space. And when such noticeable players like Facebook with Libra or Telegram with Ton say that for their 400 million user base, 2 billion user base, they want unregulated circulation of some sort of, value. Regulators saying, look, we're here. We want to regulate that. So that's what happened. And then what happened? I mean, the judge decided that SEC gave enough evidence that this was a security and not a utility. We don't want to comment that. I think it's meaningless to comment decision of the US judge. What the Ton community did is, in February, community filed so-called amicus brief to the court, explaining community's view on the state of Ton, and that Gram can be utility, and it will be utility if it would be allowed to launch.
Right.
Well, it did not impress the judge, so unfortunately, again, permanent injunction was made on March 24, and that's why the way Freeton is launched is in a highly decentralized manner. Don't want to repeat ourselves, but what we said at the beginning. That was actually one of the consequences of that decision, is that no regulator of the world can say that, can even think for a second that this could be security.
So how did you decide to release Freeton? I mean, to find the right time for it? It was when you understood that Durov's plans to release Ton will never happen, right?
That was easy. That was very easy because we just, we saw it is not happening. It won't happen.
Right.
What to wait for?
It's to be even more precise. As I said, on March 24th, the court said it put permanent injunction on the launch of Ton as is and Grams, and at that time it was clear that with a 99.9% likelihood, Telegram just would not be able to launch unless some sort of miracle happens. And then community obviously had to wait until April 30 for Telegram to settle with investors, because that was the deadline when Telegram was supposed to issue tokens or return the money. So community, waited for that, waited 7 days on top of that, just to give some time to settle with investors, and then launched. launch because it's a great technology. It shouldn't die. It should be available to the community to improve the world we live in.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just to add, for personally for myself,
Sure.
I mean, I personally didn't wait for Telegram to settle with investors, but I really don't care. Okay, what I settled is what I personally waited for example, was if in any possible scenario will be even 1% the Telegram will launch it, then we didn't want to launch if Telegram will launch. I mean, that would defeat the purpose. So I think that 7th of May was the date where we realized in 100% certainty, more or less, that it won't be launched. For me, that was the trigger.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I meant, and also that's the date when we had enough validators, top class validators, interested to join this decentralized launch. So that was additional trigger.
Okay. And do you have any information about how Pavel or his brother Nikolai reacted on the release of Freeton?
To be very honest with you, no idea. I think one needs to ask them. The public statement that they made about closing the Ton project, I don't see any relevance. They were saying in that message that that people should be concerned of the projects referring to their name or using the Ton abbreviation. So
Yeah.
Community made a public statement around that first of all we do respect the technologies that we've done and will respect the open source license that they've used, and will take on the baton and continue supporting and developing that code and bringing it into the world. For me, what I saw in that statement is the last paragraph, which is where he was saying that, well, look, we were stopped for good or bad reason, but we're hoping that community would pick up and that button and deliver this technology to the world. And that's what Freeton community is doing. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but with that announcement that Durov has done, there are a lot of rumors right now around Freeton, because he said that no Telegram brand or Ton abbreviation can be promoted in any project, and don't believe to these projects, don't give them any data, and so on. So many people in crypto community that I have spoken with recently are very concerned about that. Because you are saying that you have contacted the Durov brothers a lot of times, and they knew about your plans and Ton Labs and what you develop, but at the same time he doesn't mention Freeton as some part of legacy or some type of project he personally suggests as some option. And at the same time he's saying that any projects that use the word Ton, don't trust them. So
understand, Sergey, I can answer that. Let me answer. That's already good enough. That's already two questions. Yeah.
We just to clarify to the community, what's going on between you and Pavel Durov.
Sure. First of all, go back 15 minutes ago when I was explaining that all our discussions were only and exclusively in the context of technical collaboration with debugging of Ton. There is nothing else. They obviously had no idea about Freeton community launching Ton. I'm sure that they knew about this together with the whole world from the announcement that we made at 3 o'clock. At 2 o'clock Central European time on May 7th. So not a minute before. I'm totally convinced of that. So that's kind of statement number one. So we never contacted regarding the launch of Freeton. There cannot be any discussion, because this project has nothing to do with Telegram, with the only exception that the current code which is used is taken from the Ton.org repository. The second comment is what Pavel was saying, and I'm 100% agreeing with that, is that don't trust projects that ask you for money or data. But Freeton will never ask users for any money or any data, except some absolutely bare minimum required to, and Mitya can talk about this bare minimum, required to work with the products on top of the Freeton. And again, it's not even Freeton which is going to ask for data. But go ahead, Mitya.
No, it's just that if you go to the community website, if you want to sign the declaration, then obviously if you decided yourself that you want to sign the declaration, you need to put your name. Otherwise, what's the signature, right? And that's about it. That's exactly it. So in that respect, you should, I think, follow what Pavel said. Never share any data or trust with money any project, as he said, that uses these names. So totally agree.
Which is exactly what we're not going to do. That's why again, for us, what I read in that note is this encouragement in the last paragraph that I mentioned. I don't want to repeat, and also appeal to the users on this data money point. And again, I don't want to repeat, but we're not doing any token sales. We're not doing any ICOs, and the way tokens are going to be distributed, they'll be free for platforms/users. Platforms with users and users themselves.
Actually, I want to reinforce that point, actually, on top of what Pavel said. Actually, I really think that you should not trust anyone with money, because obviously, once it didn't happen, then anyone can go and launch something like that today, forking the code again and doing something like that, and then create, and I know for a fact that in the community, there is a discussion of the parties right now, which are, I would say, have a doubtful background about the ICOs in the past, that want to make an ICO on top of the Ton code. And I think that's exactly what Pavel was referring to when they say, do not trust with money on any project that would ask you for money and say they're Ton related. So, and I would really like to reinforce that point here. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Did
thank
it
you.
answer the question, Sergey?
Yeah, thank you very much for the clarification, because I think a lot of people were waiting for these words and to understand what is happening. And I think that on this we can close.
Can I just add, Sergey, just to finish this point?
Yeah, of course.
It's a really important point, and we take it quite seriously, given the way we launched in terms of transparency and decentralization. I can tell you more even. If one day, Telegram settles with the SEC and decides to launch their own blockchain, we would welcome that, because again, they developed the original code. I'm sure we would find ways to be complementary. There are other blockchains that have two-node implementations, for example, Ethereum. So Telegram wrote C++ node, we wrote Rust node. So for us, the real mission of this whole thing is not to put whatever Freeton or Ton Labs name in front of this and become famous and rich. For us, we're real believers in decentralization, and that in better identity management and better data management, more fair to the community, better UI UX around all this. So our idea is to deliver and mission, and why we're doing all this and working 16 hours every day is to deliver this technology to the world, and it doesn't matter so much who is doing that. That's why decentralized approach was chosen.
Yeah, thanks for this, and I think that we can close this block regarding Durov Brothers and Ton that was awaited from Telegram. So we have already mentioned Ton operating system. Can you briefly explain what is it and how it will operate?
Yeah, I think I'll take that. We wrote on our site and the documentation site a lot extensively about that. We explained why we call it actual operating system, why it's a technically valid point, I think, name for that. I mean, if you're taking a processor, the blockchain as a processor, because you have virtual machine, right? So it operates as a processor. It has assembly instructions which are processed by this processor. It's just a networking processor. It's certain processor with certain properties, like it's distributed, it's decentralized, it's verifiable computations network, right? So yeah, there is a properties of this processor. But when you have a processor, on top of that, in order to bring whatever you write as a coder, okay, as a developer, whatever you write on this programs you write on this for this processor, how do you bring that to the usage, to the user, or to any of the usage that you wanted just to perform your programs? Usually it's called operating system. Operating system is something that manages the resources of the hardware and brings it to the user interface, right? And so all that vertically integrated stack from the processor up to the end user, with all the tools and middleware. Red Hat calls it a middleware, for example, like compilers, debuggers, and SDKs, and all of that sort of stuff. So how do you call it? If you really want to call a vertical stack from the user to the processor, what's the best name to that? And we just thought, well, it's an operating system. I mean, we can't really find a better way to describe it. So the idea is to create an end-to-end decentralization, E2ED, with this philosophy, I would say, to create a stack of technology between the blockchain and the user. Okay, and so the developers can use the middleware components to write and to operate with the programs that you write for this processor, and the user will be able to operate with these programs easily, and all conserving the properties of this of the blockchain, of this technology, right? So the properties, again, the censorship resistance, for example, and verifiable computations, end-to-end verifiable computation. Again, not just the verifiable computation happens on the blockchain, but also the verifiably to the user that it happens really on the blockchain. And the data that you send to the blockchain is really the data that you intend to send to the blockchain, all of the stuff like that. Obviously, it's a lot of components to this, but if you think about that as one stack, then your kind of view on the technology that requires starting to become clearer, and it's a little bit different when you create just pieces of that, right? So yeah, we took this on ourselves as an unsurmountable task of doing this whole thing. And of course, so again, we're just in the beginning of that, I think, but there are all the basically components are there. Of course, we're improving all the time on them. And we hope that community will pick up the effort, also help us with that. And we already see that because our repository is exploding over the last 2 weeks with all sorts of issues and feedbacks and stuff like that. And again, there are the tools that we're providing. They need further development, and not all the tools are released. By the way, the main user interface for the operating system is not yet released. It will go to beta. Actually, should go to beta today, the closed beta for the certain selected amount of users. But we hope for feedback as well there. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do, but very interesting stuff. So this is really Ton operating system.
Maybe just a couple of words on components, on the key components.
There is a node, of course, which acts like of course as a processor, and then there are databases which would you think like a file system or like a more than actually file system, database component, and you can put it in your computer or computers in your network if you want, or you can use the cloud to access that. Then there are access technologies, which we call an SDK, and how you connect to this whole stack from the user base. And then there are interfaces that's written upon the SDK. And of course, there are developer tools like compilers, for example, and we have several, as I mentioned before, like Solidity, C++, C compilers, where developer can write these programs to this operating system. And then also using the SDK to easily create interface on top of that. And again, the interfaces that would preserve the properties of the decentralization properties of this technology. So yeah, that more or less, that's the components.
Okay, thanks. And what about Ton Surf? What is that?
That's a user interface.
User interface.
That's the end user interface. Again, it's just an example of, we would really like we really internally compare that to Linux in a way, not directly, of course. So you have user desktop environments in Linux, and you have, many of them, KDO, whatever. So we believe that Surf is just a user environment like that. You can write your own, and you're free to write your own, of course, and you're very welcome to write your own, as long as this is preserving this E2ED philosophy. Like, we would like to preserve this kind of thing, because we think it's really important, and that's how this whole stack is optimized for that. So to create really truly decentralized applications for the end user with this fluent user interface that Ton is enabling you to do.
Couple of words, Sergey, just to finalize answering your question on TonServe. Just to kind of as a pre-announcement, TonServe is a somewhat kind of revolutionary thing. It's, as Mitya mentioned, it's the front end that would work with the final users, and that would have it's some sort of a mixture. It has browsing functions. It's obviously a wallet. It has messaging functions. So it's a few functions in one to enable the UI UX that people got used to again with when they take their phone.
And when will it be fully released?
So,
well, today
yeah,
we will have it in closed beta for some time. We don't want to rush too much, you know. When we get the user feedback, that's what we want to get first, and then, you know, to improve on that and gradually release it. I mean, there is no, from here, I think it's just a question of whatever.
Okay.
It's not burning because there are no tons in circulation, as we said. They're only available to validators now. So it's not really needed before tons are out in the market with the final users. That's why we're not in a rush and want to do proper testing of beta.
Okay. And what are like the overall current plans of Ton Labs and FreeTon?
I can start, and Mitya can contribute. So I can do the big picture level. So the first and utmost objective is full decentralization, which is obviously important for pure utility status around the world, and importantly, including the United States. The FreeTon community wants the token to be fully operational legal in the US as well, despite everything that happened with the story of Telegram and Ton. So that's objective number one. Objective number two is intensive engagement of developer, validator, or as we already mentioned, developer and user communities. As I mentioned, there are 2.7 thousand validators who signed up and would want to become validators of phase 2, which is happening now in the contest. That's an important thing. We want many developers to join in and write different applications to make ecosystem vibrant, because it's chicken and an egg. There won't be users if there are no applications, practical applications, and there are no applications if there are no users. So it needs to be worked on simultaneously. In that sense, what I do like, and something that I'm personally supervising right now, is we see, as already mentioned, build up of global country communities around the world. There are already 6 fully functional with hundreds of users, hundreds of partners. It can be users, can be developers, can be validators. There are like 4 more coming this week, and we hope that it would cover all the key blockchain, all the key countries with significant blockchain and crypto adoption. There are about 50, I think, countries. So the objective is to cover them, to make it a truly global project with global appeal. And the very philosophical objective, and highly important, is to create a culture and environment of very engaging open source kind of culture, open source in a very broad sense, that people would, and not because they would get any tokens, it's not about getting tokens or getting remunerated, but people would sign the declaration and join because they believe in the philosophy, in the very philosophy, and what they want to contribute as administrators, as community managers, as validators, as developers, eventually obviously getting some tokens as well through contests. So that's why this whole idea of contests was born, to try and create this snowball effect, when the snowball would roll and roll and become bigger and bigger. I don't know, Mitya, if you want to add anything to that, to the plans.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that more like tactical. So I think that several things. First of all, and now again, as I said before, the Ton Labs plans and the FreeTon community plans. The Ton Labs plan is supporting the FreeTon community. That's really our plan. Okay, so we don't have any other plans. Like, we don't have any more plans for like product roadmap, which would be separate from what FreeTon community needs. And obviously, we're just part of the contributors. Maybe right now, maybe the core part, but we're welcome. Other developers are joining now and actually already joined, like we showed yesterday. I think great work by Neil Foundation about ZKPs for Ton. And there will be more. We actually will show more of these teams that are joining with different, very, very cutting edge stuff, even for all the blockchains, not just for Ton. But Ton Labs is here to support free Ton plans. And the free Ton plans, I think, and again, I'm very tactical now. I think of, okay, we need this smart contract, this smart contract, this smart contract. So that's what we're going to do. We need this soft majority voting smart contract that the contest is. And we, of course, in Ton Labs, we will support that as much as possible to help and to write whatever needed for that. There are pools, decentralized pools, which are extremely important concept for, I think, any proof of stake protocol, but we're talking about Ton and free Ton. And for free Ton, I think it's central point, because again, there are limits on the number of validators in proof of stake blockchain, unless you want to go with ETH 2.0 approach. In ETH 2.0 approach, you can take your laptop and start validating. Okay, in this approach, we have another problem, which is basically we're solving for decentralization in a very direct fashion, but what we're not solving for is performance. Right? You cannot run a network on users' laptops with the user connections, whatever they are, and hope for very great performance. Right? It's a contradiction. So we need to preserve the values of the performance is one of the value, throughput is one of the values of Ton and technology-wise. So how do we ensure that it's decentralized? Right? To do that, we need to encourage more users to stake. And how do we do that if there are only up to 1,000 validators on the network possible? And we definitely don't want to see to Ton happen something like EOS, right? When with the centralization problems. Of course, the deposit it's by design centralized, and Ton thankfully is not a DPoS system. Is proof of stake without delegation. So how do we do that? Then we believe in decentralized pools idea, where there are pools, and we're going to continue to work. Actually, the smart contracts are ready. It's just that we need to design the whole economics of that and how this whole system will work, and different aspects need to be worked upon. So we're going to do that, and we need to launch that as soon as possible. So we believe in June. So we have plans like that. We're thinking about, at least personally, I think in more or less in this kind of lines. Not thinking about 2 years from now, how we will conquer the world or whatever.
Sure.
Just trying to be here and now.
And maybe a small remark we kind of mentioned already, but the idea is that Ton Labs would contribute to the very core only, to the very core, which would make it attractive for developers to go and build on top of that core. So there is no objective of Ton Labs to try and be everywhere and write all the code there is in the world. The idea is to engage as many developers around the world as we can.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And to sum everything up, to sum this interview, can you please explain what is your personal motivation or philosophy behind doing Ton Labs and behind doing free Ton?
I can start. I mean, I jumped into this technology space 5 years ago after graduating from Singularity University, which talks about exponential technologies. And there is a lot of stuff. There is a lot of stuff in Singularity and in general that, today's world, technology world, is kind of a little bit in a dead end. I don't want to repeat, but issues like identity management, data management, the way data management is being abused by large corporations. Internet became very centralized. The way I remember internet when I first opened the browser, I think it was 1994 when I was studying in the US, it was extremely decentralized. There were very few products like Netscape Navigator, etc., but it was highly decentralized. The way where Internet 2.0 got today, it's not. and I think a lot of people are getting concerned. So we share those values, we share those concerns. That's why we got into the space to try and build a decentralized, user-friendly ecosystem.
Yeah, I can only add for that yeah, I'm doing that for more than 25 years. Exactly that. I mean, I remember first company I founded was Delta 3, which was one of the first voice over IP service providers. And when we started, it was actually very regulated industry, and you could not do that. I remember the meeting in the Ministry of Telecommunication in Israel. I went there with my investor. We stood there and we asked, can we do the voice over IP for like international phone calls? And he was looking at me like I was some kind of crazy guy. I said, no, yeah, if you want to ask me about that, no, you cannot do that. You need to get a license, and no, you cannot do it. The only country that you could do that, it was United States, and also have a license there. And we went out of this meeting, and my investor asking me, so we have two choices. We close, or we, he used the word, with F, them. What do you choose? So guess what? So like, I totally agree with Sasha. We are in this world where for some reason we're losing the freedom. And I really don't even want to call it open source anymore. I really think we need to choose what Stallman called it, free software. And the free software, and we need to choose our freedom. That's, I think, very important, as Pavel said in his letter, actually, the battle of our generation. So yes, I totally agree with that.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you want something to add or to announce to Freetown community or those who are watching us now.
We want to announce it every week.
We want to thank everybody who's involved. Again, as we mentioned, there are about 10,000 people who are involved from about 40, 45 countries from what I saw. And we want to invite everybody who shares those values to get involved. It's going to be fun. It's going to be cool. And what we'll create will all be beneficiaries of that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Mita, for this. I think that this is very clarified interview, let's call it like that. It's clarifying a lot of questions and issues and things that the crypto community is concerned about. And I can wish you only good luck on Freetown and Ton Labs and all things that you are working on. And yeah, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sergey.
Thank you, Sergey. By the way, great book that you have at the background about Bitcoin. We like it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.